Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting edition of Boyographic, show in which I, Matt, the Game Boy, talk you through the highs and lows of the Game Boy library, one cart at a time. This week we'll be continuing your license with one of the heavyweights of the Game Boy's licensed library. It's Batman. I think it's fair to say, in the 90 or so episodes I've done so far of Boyographic, I've shown you that not all licensed games are created equal. Some are good, some are bad, and some are the greatest games on the system. However, when it comes to licensed games on the Nintendo Entertainment System, there are a few games talked about in such revel tones that I'm sad I never owned them growing up. They're usually by one of two developers, Capcom or Sunsoft, because, let's be honest, they also made some of the best original games on the system. But while we'll get into some Disney goodness later in the month, it's time we had a talk about the Dark Knight himself. Yes folks, Batman. The game based on Tim Burton's 1989 classic arrived on the NES the same year it hit the big screen. Its gameplay, for those who've not had the privilege, is very similar in most respects to games like Ninja Gaiden, and is definitely worth a playthrough, if not for the wall jumping and visuals, then for the absolutely amazing soundtrack. While it tied loosely into Burton's dark take on Gotham, the game sold incredibly well and cemented Sunsoft as a key developer on the NES. For the Game Boy release, however, Sunsoft decided to build the game from the ground up rather than push out a lazy port. Releasing just 5 months after the NES game and marking Sunsoft's debut on the system, Batman was the work of mostly the same team who worked on the home console version. And while spiritually the same game, it is definitely optimised for the Game Boy. The portable version, first off, follows the story of the movie a little bit more closely than the NES game. Batman eavesdrops on Commissioner Gordon at a party and hears of a bust on Axis Chemicals. Batman gets there, fights Jack, creates the Joker, goes to the museum, flies a Batwing, and eventually gets to Gotham Cathedral to face off against the foe he himself created. That's 4 levels with a total of 10 stages and 5 bosses between them, all built for the DMG's teeny tiny screen. Naturally, with the size limitation in mind, the sprites of Batman and enemies are scaled down to allow Batman to run and gun with the best of them. Yes, I did say gun. Batman shoots people in this game because, well, it's a licensed platformer in the early 90s. What else is he going to do? While it doesn't feel very Batman, it does offer a solid experience that I guess is now comparable to games like Contra. While you're doing this running and gunning, you can pick up points and power-ups dotted around the stages, mainly from shooting the destructible blocks that litter each level. These blocks come in 2 shades, light and dark, with the latter guaranteeing you some bonus points or some sweet upgrades, either in the form of how many projectiles Batman can shoot, or by changing his gun up entirely. That being said, this is a Sunsoft game, and as they've proven over the years, the company loves to challenge and punish players in equal measure. So to go with the cool gun upgrades such as the wave gun and batarangs, you can also pick up your normal and short guns in the stages, which, well, do exactly as they say on the tin. Destruction of the game's light blocks is more of a tactical thing actually, as while sometimes they will stop you from collecting a power-up, in the latter stages they're crucial to navigating your way around the levels, encouraging you not to simply jump around and fire off screen, but to take your time and execute enemies efficiently. Though, by randomly firing, you can unlock a few secrets along the way. While the shooting in Batman feels great, even if it doesn't feel like Batman, the jumping is a little bit floaty, and perhaps the biggest gripe I have with the game. As you reach some of the latter stages, precision platforming is really vital to success, and you can easily under or overcook your jump. While the game does offer unlimited continues, dying right at the end of a stage sends you right back to the beginning of a level, which sucks as bosses are tough and the levels themselves are pretty long. Fortunately though, Sunsoft does meet the player halfway and carries over their gun upgrades past the continue screen. The boss battles against Jack and the Joker respectively are pretty straightforward, with only the boss's bullet spongy nature posing a real threat to the player if you can't be bothered to learn the enemy patterns. These lackluster boss battles are more than made up for by the game's 3rd level, which is the Batman side-scrolling shmup we've all been waiting for. Based on the movie's Batwing section, Batman takes to the skies in order to nail anything attempting an aerial assault. Helicopters, planes and blimps are nothing compared to the power of the Batwing. though the bosses Batman faces in the sky have much more complex patterns than the foes he faces on foot. By pressing A you shoot forward and B shoots behind you. It's all pretty straightforward and incredibly enjoyable. In fact, it was only on playing this section that I remembered that this became somewhat of a trope for Sunsoft on the Game Boy, with their Looney Tunes game released in 1992 taking Porky Pig on a similar high-flying adventure. What more is there to say? Batman is a solid game that, despite being an early Game Boy release with some issues in its platforming, all in all holds up as one of the best licensed games on the system in my opinion, and dare I say it, for me, with all sense of nostalgia and historical progression removed, probably a more enjoyable game than its NES older brother. With a killer soundtrack by Naomi Kodaka and Nobuyuki Hara, pair this with non-offensive visuals and smart designs around the system's limitations, and I dare say if you see Sunsoft's Batman, then you need to pick it up. It's a common cart that fortunately at the time of publishing this, like its NES older brother, is incredibly affordable. This is more than can be said for the Mega Drive and PC Engine Sunsoft Batman titles, so why not pick up the best of the bunch and leave all your friends wondering where you got all those wonderful toys. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Boyographic, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please check out some more of our videos and share the channel around with people you think may be interested. Until next week, where we return with another episode of your license, find me on Twitter at Gameboy. Until then though, Game Boys and Girls, game on.